Welcome to the League One playoff preview from Not the Top 20 podcast. We are sponsored by Sky Bet and the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund. We are Ali and George. We are 10 years old next week, and we are having a 10-year birthday party at Philomena's in Covent Garden on Monday, the 11th in the evening. We're going to be watching the Hull-Millwall second leg. And if you're watching this or listening to this and you've enjoyed Not the Top 20 either for a week, a month, or perhaps 10 years, come and party with us in London next Monday. Open invite. Let us know if you're coming. This is a hybrid show. It is a playoff preview show. We're going to go through each of the semi-final matchups. We're also going to be making betting picks as well. So it's very strictly for over 18s only. Betting comes with risks. And we ask that anyone thinking of placing a bet, be gamble aware, head to gambleaware.org to brush up on the risks that come with gambling. Quite an interesting League One playoff picture, if I may. And I think, hopefully, over the course of the next half an hour, we'll explain to you why. We'll start with Stockport and Stevenage. That's third place Stockport and sixth place Stevenage, but only 2 points between them. And therefore only 2 points between all four of these teams over a 46-game season. Stevenage won both of the regular season games against Stockport, 3-1 and 2-1. So let's start with them, George, because while Lincoln City, obviously the main story in League One this season, in terms of other underdogs or dark horses, Stevenage are up there too.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. They finished 14th last season. The season before that, when Alex Ravel kind of came in late on in the campaign, they just missed out in the playoffs. They've been punching above their weight for quite a long time. And I think that in Ravel, you've got one of the best kind of managerial stories in the EFL at the moment. A guy who had a first spell at the club, which culminated in a relegation that never happened because there was a reprieve. He then kind of served his time as Steve Evans' number two, and then returned back. When does it ever happen where someone, comes back to the club having not really left for their second spell in charge, which is so much more successful than the first. And it's a lesson that things aren't linear and you can't basically be like, oh, he was rubbish then, so he's going to be rubbish again or whatever else. Like Ravel obviously learnt. We spoke to him about this on the How Do You Manage that we did with him last season. And it's been amazing to see how they've got on this campaign. The preseason expectations were kind of quite a big range. Like it wouldn't have been a massive surprise to see them battling relegation. Some had them as dark horses. I look back at our individual 1 to 24s before we mushed them together, and you had them 7th. So fair play to you. You saw it. I had them 15th. I wasn't a believer. And they have one of these kind of game models or ways to approach things where it's just all about their defense. They are incredibly solid defensively and they're pretty efficient going forward, but they don't really need to score very many goals to pick up points. Only Lincoln have conceded fewer goals this season, and of Stevenage's 21 wins, 11 finished 1-0.
Nice.
Their form going into the playoffs is really good. Now, we should caveat that by saying that they might have got a bit lucky on final day. They weren't great at home to Wigan, and again, they needed to win. Bertoni, the Wigan teenage striker, came off the bench and hit the woodwork, and shortly afterwards, Stevenage scored a late winner. I know from the comments from Saturday that some Stevenage fans still think the ball went over the line. I'm still pretty convinced that it didn't. If only I could have been there to see it myself. But they have, because that's the only people who saw it go over the line were people who were there. So yeah. But the replays look pretty conclusive to me. But either way, it's a reward for an incredible season and an incredible run, because they have lost one of their last 9 games at the end of the campaign. The only defeat, a 5-1 defeat at Bolton, where they had a man sent off in the first half. And we also know that teams who get hammered by Bolton shortly before the playoffs and get into the playoffs have quite a good record in them. They only conceded 3 goals in the other 8 games away from that Bolton game, and 2 of those were against champions Lincoln. So they come into the playoffs in really good shape defensively. They went 8 winless back in Christmas, New Year time, which was at the point where we were concerned for them in terms of not only falling out of the playoff places, but their underlying numbers are really poor as well. And but for Ravel to kind of turn it around has been so impressive. The starter players, I say, they've scored the 4th fewest goals in the league, with 49.
The 3 teams who scored fewer Rotherham, Northampton, Port Vale, bottom three.
But what's crazy about this is that their XG is exactly their goals as well. So it's 48.774. So it's not even like an anomaly. This is just what they are going forward. They have the third lowest possession, 44.9%. They are the most direct team in the league again. 48.8% of their passes go forward. But really weirdly, they're putting the second fewest crosses in the league. So like they're basically getting the ball forward, but never getting it wide and never really swinging it in the box, or not particularly often. They don't press particularly high. They have the fewest passes per sequence in the league, which is an Opta stat around how regularly you keep the ball before you turn it over. Theirs is the lowest. So basically,
it's interesting this actually, because as you detail this all, strikes me that it's quite unusual that they wouldn't have like a big man up top for this style. Like they've got Jamie Reid, who works incredibly hard, but is aerially not exactly a monster. I guess when they signed Ghassan Ahadme, they were hoping that he might be that, and he's been anything but that. You know, Matt Phillips plays at the top of the pitch with Jamie Reid as well. So it's an interesting, stylistically and in terms of the profile of players at the top of the pitch, really interesting.
I think what it is that they back, or Ravel backs their players, defenders and attacking players, basically in their duels. So they sit deep. They don't really look to press the opposition. But in Pierre Gianni, in Freestone at left back, who's currently injured, in Charlie Good at centre back, and Wilden at right back, who's also currently injured. And these are two concerns because we don't know if they're going to be back for these games. Two fullbacks who've been massive forward in their season. They've got a lot of really good one-on-one defenders who his centre backs he can back to win their aerial duels. The full backs he can back to win their ground duels against wide players. So it's kind of like inviting pressure, knowing they can defend their box incredibly well. And then from an attacking perspective, I think it's getting certain players, certainly Dan Kemp and Jamie Reid, to basically attack into space. And therefore, rather than it being crosses, how many times have you seen balls over the top, which Reid kind of scampers onto? Like that is their means. It's basically bringing the defensive line forward and then turning them quickly with the players they've got and getting the ball into feet. To certainly Dan Kemp in the last kind of 6 weeks or so of the season's been brilliant. And then, Phillips comes in as that more physical presence up top. And then Harvey White, who's a good technician in the middle of the park, but also good from set pieces as well. Because from set pieces, they are excellent. 21 set piece goals from the third highest set piece XG. Only 11 set piece goals conceded, which is the third fewest too. So good from set pieces. Defend their box incredibly well. Don't create much, but don't really need to because they're so good at making sure the opposition don't score too many against them.
Yeah, that they have, they are the outsiders of the four. Bolton, Bradford, Stockport, all stronger favourites. The Sky Bet promotion odds over Stevenage, but they are the best defensive team of the four. And they have a massive advantage in terms of their set piece output this season. Both of those things are some of the most important parts of the game, and particularly in tight playoff action. I do think that's interesting. To balance, I'd like to be candid and say that I have felt a little bit. So two things are true. I have loved the content coming from Stevenage making the playoffs over the weekend. Incredible scenes, incredible celebrations, looked like quite a big piss up. Some great videos. I've enjoyed every one of them, to be honest with you. But I have slightly worried that it felt like those celebrations were like, that was the achievement in itself. And that was almost like, whoa, we've made it. That's awesome. Whereas actually, they've got 2 more games to play. Like I worry a little bit. Of course, it might mean nothing and they refocus and whatnot. They've got lots of time between final day and the first leg. But there's just that slight aspect when you're really zooming in, you're trying to look for anything. I was like, do they think that was the achievement? And like, are they actually up for playing for a place in the Championship? We will find out. They are playing against Stockport County. Now, one of the most dependable things in the last few years of EFL analysis has been Stockport are good and Stockport get better each year, right? They have Dave Challoner as their manager, who has one of the most insane records ever in 15 full seasons as a manager, and that hopefully does leave out the one truncated season that he managed in COVID. He's never finished below a playoff place. In 15 full seasons as a manager, Challoner has never finished below a playoff place. But Stockport have been in the playoffs 4 times in the last 8 seasons, and they've not been good in them, and they've not won them. And Challoner was only in charge for 2 of these. In fact, for one of Stockport's playoff defeats, he was in charge of Hartlepool, their opposition at that time. But they've not got a great record in the playoffs. They've not got a great record at Wembley. I remember them losing to Carlisle in the League 2 playoff final, which seemed unbelievable to me at that time based on the quality of the two teams. And they were pretty underwhelming against Leyton Orient in losing in the semi-finals last time out, albeit got slightly done over by a dodgy offside call. They've been a bit of a paradox this season, George, Stockport, because to our own very lofty expectations of them, and to, I think, those within the clubs, similarly and understandably lofty expectations of them based on constant improvement, based on upwards trajectory season on season, I think they've been a bit underwhelming. And they have got 10 points less than they got last season, but they still finished third in the league. They're still the third best team over 46 games in terms of their results in League One. So that's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around. They've scored 1 goal fewer than last season, so going forward broadly similar, but they've conceded 16 goals more. At the back, way leakier than they were last season, and that worries me. Now, Challinor has always been very front-footed as a manager, and that can be manifested in different ways. He loves a triple sub at half-time, or even a quad sub at half-time after a poor first half, and he loves a flamethrower of a post-match interview. And this season, it feels like we've seen both of those things like more and more, as I don't feel like Challinor and this group have quite meshed as well as previous Stockport teams under Challinor. And despite that, they finished third again. They come into this having had a pretty crazy end to the season. 9 games between the 3rd of April and the 2nd of May. So 9 games in a month, with a cup final defeat in there against Luton as well. In the league, they've won 4, drawn 2, lost 2. So not terrible in terms of points return, but the losses were quite ugly. Home to Mansfield, and then particularly home to Port Vale, when they just needed a point to secure the playoffs. Did the business on final day at Barnsley, got 3rd spot, get the tie against Stevenage. A couple of players to mention. Kyle Wootton. Kyle Wootton needs a mention because Kyle Wootton is the 2nd top scorer in the whole of League One this season, but he has started the last 6 games of the season at centre-back. Kyle Wootton is Stockport's centre-back heading into the playoffs. Now, I can't get a steer on who might return in time for the playoffs. There's an argument that Wootton has played well enough and developed a small relationship with Ethan Pye that they might stick with him even if Olowu was to come back. But saying that out loud, it seems ridiculous. If someone comes back and is available, surely Wootton will go back up top. Except at the top of the pitch, they've got quite a lot of options as well right now, which we'll get onto. It's not very settled to finish the season. Lots of different players playing at the top of the pitch in different positions, lots of talented individuals, but I think still working out the best combination and style compared to Stevenage, who absolutely know themselves 100%. Their starting 11 is pretty much, etched in stone, and the way of playing etched in stone. Stockport come into this with Wootton at centre-back, with different guys playing at the top of the pitch, like chucking a lot of stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, really. And that slightly worries me. They've got great players. Ollie Norwood is at the base of midfield. Ethan Pye, the left centre-back. Louis Barry is back, is fit. Scored a hat-trick the other day. Sidibe, the striker, who they signed in January from St Johnstone, he's got plenty about him, very, very quick. And then Corey Adai was iconic in the playoffs 2 years ago with Crawley in League Two. Which Corey Adai will turn up because he's capable of great saves, but he is capable of some howlers as well. For the first time in years, George, I have genuinely no idea what Stockport will be like. Their recent playoff record, under Challinor, worries me a bit, but the whole vibe of the last few months worries me a little bit as well. My bets for this game and for the first leg are Stevenage to win to 0.
Wow.
At 3-1, and a 0-0 draw in the first leg at 8-1. I don't think Stockport are cooking, so to speak, at the top of the pitch, and they come up against the second best defensive team in the league, or the best defensive team in the league. I don't think Stevenage are a team that are going to create tons and tons of chances either. And so I think a low-scoring game is likely. I think Stevenage winning their home leg to 0 feels good to me. You mentioned how many 1-0 wins they've had. And the 0-0 draw, if neither team gets going offensively, at 8-1, feel like 2 decent picks to me, both with Sky Bet.
Blimey. Yeah, I've gone for BTTS no at 5-6 in the first leg.
Like it.
Just think that with Stevenage's defensive record and the fact that Stockport again will go to Stevenage and just think if we can just get through this unscathed, then we'll really fancy our chances to beat them when we take them back to Stockport. So that's my only kind of bet in this. But I'm afraid I'm going against you. I mean, I would say that I am in agreement where like the one thing that really nags me is that Stevenage have gone into 2 playoff campaigns in the last, 3 seasons under Challinor, and I've really fancied them going into both of them, and they haven't turned up in either. Like really haven't turned up in either. And there was the weird one against Salford where they kind of got through the semis and on penalties, but weren't great in either game, and then were poor at Wembley, but still only lost on penalties. But that they should have walked that playoff, that playoff campaign. And then last year as well, where they were beaten over 2 legs. So that is a concern for me. But I do just think that Stockport should have enough to get by. I mean, I'd love, as I say, love Stevenage to continue this incredible story. And it would be amazing to see Alex Ravel going back to Wembley, where he scored that incredible goal in the League One playoffs for Rotherham, in 2014. But I think Stockport should have too much. It feels to me like a bad fit for Stevenage, this, where they're playing against a team who aren't great defensively, but have some serious firepower going forward and an attacking, they will look to attack the game in a way that I think over 180 minutes, Stevenage might struggle to kind of keep them at bay as comfortably as they would some other teams who maybe don't have quite as potent an attacking force. So I'm putting up Stevenage at 9-4. The thought being that if they do get through these over 2 legs, I'd really fancy them in the final, because that would show at least that they have stepped up to the plate to an extent in the first semi.
Exciting. And Bolton Bradford. Wow. Mouth-watering as well. It's very easy to set this one up. Bolton and Bradford, the 2 biggest fan bases in the league. There are 2 League One teams who average over 20,000 fans at home, and that is Bradford with 20,444 and Bolton 21,692. These are going to be raucous atmospherically, a great advert for our brilliant third tier. And who knows which way it's going to go. Let's see if we can pick some bones out of it. They drew 1-1 a couple of weeks back at Valley Parade, and they drew 0-0 earlier in the season at Bolton. So nothing to separate them in the games that they've played thus far. Bradford finished 4th on 77 points with a +7 goal difference. Bolton finished on 75 points with a +18 goal difference. I'm going to talk about Bradford City because what an incredible season. They finished 3rd in League 2 last season. They were promoted with the final deflection of the final game of the season. And what a response it's been. They've stepped up so well, finishing 4th. They were top 2 for quite a large part of the first part of the season. They had a really tough spell in January, which included losing to Lincoln and Cardiff, who both then pulled away and finished in the top 2. They had a weird run in the middle of the season where they didn't draw for 21 games. They won 12 and they lost 9. And that's quite mad, but actually quite good for points return. And then in the last 10 games of the season, they've just slowed down a little bit. 10 games to finish the season with more draws than wins or losses. 3 wins, 3 losses, and 4 draws. And the second half of the season, they did slow down compared to their fast start. Their points return was kind of lower top half, 43 points from their first 23 games, and then 34 points from their second 23, a drop of 9 points in the second half of the season. That brought some of the January transfer business and strategy under the microscope. They were very active. They signed Caden Jackson, they signed Lee Evans, Paul Mullin, Ethan Wheatley, Louis Sibley, Harrison Ashby, Joe White. 7 players joined in January, and a couple of old stalwarts departed as well. Those 7 players have combined for only 24 starts between them, the majority from Caden Jackson. He's really the only one of 7 that's had any kind of positive impact up to this point. So it has been a bit of a grind to end the season, but even so, I want to make the point, I think they've grinded in quite a positive manner, if that makes some sense. Yes, they've been finding it tough, but they haven't folded. I think the backbone is still there. I think the personality of the team is still there, the team spirit and ethic. They've maintained a good work rate, good defensive shape. They've just found things a bit tougher at the top of the pitch. I think their intensity in their attacking play, which kind of was there for all to see at the start of the season, has maybe worn off a little bit. The good news was teams around them were nothing special either. They ended up finishing above Bolton, of course, with Stockport and Nicky in front of them both on final day. Graham Alexander, the gaffer, what a manager, what a job he is doing. From a motivation standpoint and his management of the group, incredible. In terms of the tactics, absolutely excellent defensive shape and structure. They don't give up many big chances. And remember when they couldn't win away, which felt like a real weakness of this Bradford team? Well, actually, their last few away games, they did fine. And they finished the season 8th in the away table overall. What was anyone worried about there? 3rd in the home table in League One. Fortress Valley Parade. They do have a negative set-piece goal difference, so they're not that strong in that part of the game, which is a bit of a surprise. They've got some big lads, some 3 centre-backs, some strapping lads up top. Not been great in the old set pieces. 3 at the back, as mentioned, Curtis Tilt, Joe Wright, Aidan Baldwin. Really settled, strong part of the team. Baldwin in particular, probably the best on the ball of those 3. Max Power and Jensen Metcalf are the midfield too. Now that's an old head and a youngster, a whippersnapper. Jensen Metcalf is one to watch for the neutral, the youngster, the only player across England's top 4 tiers in 2026 to record 40 plus tackles, 110 plus ball recoveries, and 120 plus successful duels per Nathan Evans of Opta. He is a bit of everything and a good ball player too. The wingbacks are Ibu Toure and Josh Neufville, and they do have a bit of a right side bias with Neufville the better going forward, and Baldwin, who plays right centre back, he likes to step forward into the opposition half as well. So they do skew right a little bit. They'll put pressure on Bolton's left side and George Johnston and whoever plays left wing. And up top, this is where they've been struggling a little bit. Bobby Poynton's been injured the last 4 games. That's massive because he is really their star player, their most inventive attacking player, I would say. Might be back for this. I'm not sure. Sarcevic will probably play. Stephen Humphreys might play up top. If not, Caden Jackson will. They will probably share the minutes unless he goes with both of them at the top of the pitch. So lots to look out for here. Poynton and Metcalf, the young stars, I'd say, from the neutral point of view. Humphreys is a great individual player with a lot of good attributes, although he doesn't really like playing up top, which I find quite funny. And I think in terms of the matchup with Bolton, I don't expect them to go gung-ho here. They're going to have to defend incredibly well. I think there's a chance that they could hurt Bolton on the counter-attack because Bolton do commit a lot of men forwards. Humphreys and Jackson, Swan off the bench, decent counter-attacking options at the very top of the pitch. Neufville as well, when he gets on his bike down the right-hand side, he'll be winning any sprint races with George Johnston, the left-back. But it's going to be really interesting to see how they approach the first leg in particular, which is at Bolton. Atmosphere is going to be up. Bolton are going to be going full in their faces, gung-ho attacking approach. And in the home game the other day that Bradford had, they didn't just sit back. They didn't bunker in and put 11 men behind the ball. They put quite a lot of pressure on the ball. Humphreys was playing off the left, Jackson at the top of the pitch, Neufville pushed really high up out of possession. Lapsley was there as well in a kind of pressing number 10 role. And Bolton actually played over them with quite a lot of joy. So I don't know whether that means Bradford will sit in more and just try and soak up the pressure. Against Bolton, that means you're vulnerable just to get a bit pinned back and to have Kozia Dewberry and Sissoko dribbling at you from out wide. But if you push up high, Bolton can go long into Dolby or Kenny or Burstow, who are all quite good from a physical point of view at the top of the pitch against a group of centre-backs that I don't think really want to defend space. They prefer defending short spaces, compact, inside their own box. So tactically, not sure what Graham Alexander's going to do, but you can normally back him to work it out. What of their opponents, Bolton?
Yeah, there was a time early in the season where it looked like they were one of, if not the best team in the league in terms of the numbers they were posting, but they kept drawing games that they were better in. It kind of felt like a lot of the early season promise kind of fizzled away a little bit. Mario Kozia Dewberry started the season looking like he was probably the likely winner of the League One Player of the Season award. He still has his moments, but he hasn't necessarily posted the numbers that we expected. 8 goals and 10 assists is obviously a decent haul, but you feel like with his talent, he should be playing in League One, and it could have been more. Their undoing for much of this season has been their performances against, especially away from home, against the poorer teams in the league. Against Northampton, Burton, Peterborough and Port Vale, they lost their away games, their 4 away games, 9-1 on aggregate against those 4 teams, which is ridiculous for a team of their quality and maybe shows that they're a side where when they come up against kind of robust opposition who are happy to defend deep, they struggle to penetrate that low block, which could be interesting if they face Stevenage in the playoff final, you might think. But against the better teams, they've been much better, although they did lose to Luton on final day 3-2, and they lost at Cardiff not long ago 2-0 as well. And they ended up only finishing 1 point inside the playoffs in the end, which, considering where they'd been for much of the season, is pretty crazy. And you look back to the 3-3 draw against Huddersfield, where they were down to 10 men in the third last game of the season. They came back and drew it 3-3. Like, had they not come back and drawn that game, they may well have fallen out of the playoffs altogether, which is, it never really felt particularly in jeopardy, but actually it got pretty close towards the end. They're in not great form. They've won 2 of their last 10 games. One of those was the game against Stevenage that I mentioned, where they won 5-1, but Stevenage were down to 10 for most of it. Having kept a clean sheet since the 17th of March. They put in a decent performance at Bradford a couple of weeks ago, where they played okay. We know what we're going to get with them. They are possession heavy. patient build up, high line, basically look to keep the ball pretty consistently. And, the fact that if you look at their kind of passing numbers, I think George Johnson, who should be back from injury for the first leg, he has attempted the most passes of anyone in League One, which shows where they're keeping the ball. And if you look at who averages the most passes in their squad, it's Johnson, it's Toll, it's Farino. When it feels like under Evitt, that probably would have been Sheehan, who now is seeing less of it. But having said that, interestingly, the way that they look to attack is they keep the ball and they almost kind of pass the opposition into stupor and then kind of nip the ball into Sheehan and then pass it kind of quickly through. And it's interesting to note that they rank high for direct attacks, which for a team that are possession heavy is quite novel, because it shows that when they do get it forward, they get it forward very quickly. And their set piece record isn't great going forward, but they've conceded the fourth fewest set pieces so far this season. So like possession heavy, high line, will look to keep the ball, can maybe be exploited in terms of pressing their centre-backs or screening Sheehan, which is what Oxford did incredibly well at Wembley a couple of seasons ago, and stopping their outball, because feeding him is often the way that they can then spring. They have in Ruben Rodriguez brought in a player who is being used sparingly, but has provided some kind of real moments of quality and has enabled them to unlock defences in recent weeks with his good passing ability. Mason Burstow is another one who, like Cozy Dewberry, started the season very strongly, and maybe because he's quite young and played a lot of minutes, he's gone off the ball a little bit. But Johnny Kenny, as you mentioned, has kind of come in and done incredibly well. So I think they come into it in all right shape. I think of all the kind of playoff teams in League One, they're the ones where we know that they're going to dominate the ball basically in any game that they play in. I find this tie really hard to work out. It feels like they're pretty well matched. Bolton are favourites, which I think is fair enough over the course of the season, but I wouldn't be in a rush to side with them.
Yeah, I think overall I'm with you. Accepting that, as I said, Bradford in the second half of the season, more like a kind of 10th to mid-table type team. I still just have a better feeling about them in my gut, for whatever that's worth. And certainly that, combined with the fact that Bolton are pretty strong favourites to get through the tie, I think I'd probably be leaning towards Bradford in terms of the betting markets. But I'm not going to go for a TQ or anything like that. I'm going to go fairly simple, actually. In the first leg, Bolton v Bradford, I'm going to bet on the second half to have most goals at 11-10. So very, very strong trend in Bolton matches, where they have such strength in depth. They have so many good attacking players to bring off the bench that they do finish games very, very strong. They've scored so many goals late on in games. And in the first half of their games, they've scored 24 and conceded 20 for 44 total goals. In the second half, they've scored 46, almost twice as many as in the first half. And they concede more as well, 32 in the second half of games. So really strong trend from Bolton's season. I would expect that Bradford will go there and initially look to keep things tight and make sure that that they kind of kill the game basically as much as they can early on. I'd expect lots of time wasting early on, lots of stoppages. The keeper will go down and they'll get some more tactical instruction on. They'll try and keep the game, boil it down to not much to start with. But I think over the course of 90 minutes, Bolton will come on a little bit stronger and open up a little bit. So second half to be the half with most goals. That's 11-10 with Sky Bet in the first leg. Nice. Bolton against Bradford.
Yeah, I've gone, this is kind of speculative, just put something up, even though I do quite like it. There's an interesting angle to this, which is that normally the away team in the first leg are the favourites, whereas here, because Bolton slipped down to fifth, they are the favourites, but they host first up, which might change, the fact that we often have a low goal expectancy in the first leg, because Bolton will want to make sure that they can basically, if they can, put this tie to bed in the first leg. And they are scoring a lot of goals at the moment. They're conceding a lot of goals too. So it wouldn't surprise me if this is high scoring. I'm going to go for Bolton to score over 1.5 goals at 10-11 as the way to play this. It wouldn't surprise me if this ends up being a bit more end-to-end than we see from a lot of the other first legs. But Bolton have a lot of players that can hurt Bradford. And I think that'll be the way they set up to try and attack the game. Yeah,
most interested in Bradford's approach here in this first leg. I've already mentioned it, but as you talked about Bolton, I got more and more and more interested in this, just in terms of Bolton, Bradford rather, one of the pressiest teams in the league. I talked about the fact that in the game between these two teams recently. I was surprised how many men they had right at the top of the pitch trying to put pressure on Bolton's back line, but that was their approach. They're top in the division for pressed sequences this season. They have the third highest PPDA and the highest line in terms of their start distance. Them and Stevenage really do try and compress the pitch by keeping a really, really high line. And those are really interesting tactical details ahead of these games. So League One, we've got Stevenage, Stockport, we've got Bradford and Bolton. In terms of an outright pick, in the Championship, I picked the favourite, Southampton. In League One, I'm picking the outsiders, Stevenage.
Wow.
I feel that Bolton and Stockport, who are fairly significant favourites to win their semi-finals, I think it's a lot tighter, or it's going to be a lot tighter in reality than the odds suggest. So I'm interested in the outsiders, and of the two, I'm going to go with Stevenage. They are 9-2 to win the League One playoffs with Sky Bet. This is about them being incredibly comfortable in their own skin, knowing themselves and their strengths and weaknesses and playing accordingly. They are going to have fewer fans than whoever gets to the final and plays against them. But I feel something for Stevenage. I think at the prices, I'm interested in them as the outsiders at 9-2.
Yeah, as I said, Stockport are the ones I'm going for here at 9-4.
Okay, that's the end of the League One playoff preview. We've done the same for League Two and the Championship, so wherever you found this, they won't be far away. Let us know what you think in the comments, what your picks are, who you think is going to go all the way and win promotion to the Championship, and we'll be back in coming days as we react to playoff semi-finals, first legs, second legs, previewing the final. We're not going anywhere, but you can come and party with us to celebrate our 10-year anniversary of NTT20 next Monday night at Philomena's in Covent Garden. Just let us know if you're coming. That would be great. Thank you, and go well.